All right, everyone. Last looks. Quiet on set. Roll sound. Sound speed. Roll camera. Camera speed. Scene 1. Take 1. Market. And action. Hi, I'm Ed, the host of Savannah on Film, and we explore the economic and cultural impact and values of the film industry in Savannah through conversations with people who work in the industry in related fields. You can find us here on WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. Hello and welcome to another fine episode of Savannah on Film. I'm your host, Ed Susevich, and you're listening here on WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. And today our guest is the talented and wonderful award-winning actor, producer, writer, production manager, and all-around awesome guy, awesome person, Patrick Roper. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Excellent. Patrick has starred in many films, playing a vast array of characters. His characters are often complicated, conflicted, even charismatic. Patrick has a knack for making you feel and sympathize for the characters he plays. I first had the privilege to work with Patrick and see him in action on the set of the 48-hour film project of the movie Indeed. I told Patrick at the time that he was one of the most talented professionals that I had ever seen on set. Patrick ended up winning the award for Best Actor for portrayal of Luke Beardsley, a traveling salesman on a special mission for Indeed. The movies he has starred in display a wide range of talent that the world needs to experience. One of his standout roles, though he didn't receive a lot of screen time and it was uncredited unfortunately, was the exceptionally powerful The Birth of a Nation in 2016. So let's look at, Patrick, of just a few of your accomplishments here, and then we'll get into our interview if that's fine.
Sure.
Okay. And going in chronological order, as it were, we're starting with Cello from the 48 Hour, which you were nominated for Best Actor, an exceptional film there. And we have also Killer Man, which is in post-production, I believe, right now.
Yeah, currently that one's in post. I have a small part in that, but it was a exceptionally fun and cool part. So that'll all be fun when that comes out.
Yes. We had the mockumentary that you did with David Harlan Russo, who is a former guest on our show. If you check out last week's episode on YouTube, Savannah on Film, you'll see that, or actually you'll hear it also. But The Moss Man Cometh, a mockumentary, that was in 2017. Then we had Una, A Dark Fairy Tale.
Yeah, that one I was primarily a producer on.
Okay, but short.
I showed up and did a few little things on that project, but primarily was producing on that.
All right. And then we have Savior's Mule, which is another one that we did in what we refer to as the Suitcase Trilogy of films, and all that, which includes Indeed, Savior's Mule, and Moss Man Cometh. Let's see. In 2017, you were in Wilt, another short. Indeed, we said, in 2017. So you're a very busy man, very busy actor.
I try to keep as busy as possible.
Exactly. 2016, you were in Waiting for the Punchline, another short, along with Scalawag. And in 2016, of course, The Birth of a Nation. and that was an uncredited role there, and that was a powerful, powerful movie.
Yeah, that I actually initially got hired as background on that, and Nate Parker, who was the director and star writer and 101 other things on that, he was a very busy man on that set. He was very hands-on with the actors and even the background, which was cool. And he directed. I was in a scene playing a slave buyer, so not a very nice human being. And he directed me and a few other people to do some things. And as it turned out, what I did, the look, the glare that I gave, they considered quite lovely and horrible and nasty, so that ended up in the film. And I still get stopped on the street for that one, which amazes me, actually.
That's
it's like people
awesome.
recognize me for that.
Such a powerful film. You also did, and help me with the title here in case I mess it up, from 2015, the TV series Taradiddle.
Oh, Taradiddle, yeah.
Taradiddle.
That was a web series.
Okay. You also did, in 2015, you did Behind Closed Doors, another short. 2015, Red Band Society TV series. Waiting for Superman. You were in that in 2015.
That was the episode of Red Band Society.
Red Band Society. 2014, Back to One. Was that also part of that?
That was part of the 48.
That was part of the 48. Okay. And 1996, 1,000 Years was a short that you did there. Now, you have some producer creds all the way from where you've mainly been producer. Sometimes you've been co-producer on a few of these. You were executive producer. We're just looking at The Moss Man Cometh, Una, A Dark Fairy Tale, Savior's Mule, Wilt, Indeed, 1,000 Years. And 1,000 Years in 1996, you wrote that.
Yeah, I wrote that. That was my first outing, really producing and acting and writing, and just my first really outing on the whole production side of things. We produced that on the Washington State coast on 16 millimeter.
Wow!
We had an old 1960 something. Eclair MPR 16 millimeter camera and a bunch of film that we had kind of surreptitiously conned out of somebody. Actually, the cinematographer who had the camera he had a bunch of stock film, and he was just so happy to work with us at the time that he donated the film to us. And he thought we were kind of crazy to do what we were doing, so he wanted to jump on board. But yeah, we went old school on that one because back then there really wasn't a digital
That's true.
method for doing it. So
It's bad when 1996 seems like so long ago.
Yep. A lot has changed in this industry, both in terms of production and in the acting world. It's been fascinating. I have a weird connection to an older time period of doing this stuff that most people who are starting out in both production and acting probably don't know that much about. We had a very analog way of doing things.
Yeah. You're a very old soul in that way. And that's a compliment. You also were a production manager on the short, unit production manager for the film Wilt in 2017.
Yeah. That was also for the 48. And I had a friend, originally I was debating whether I was going to do it that year, and a friend of mine wanted to produce a film and kind of begged me to, help, because I think she wanted to just have a little bit more expertise with somebody who had produced before. And I have a good organizational background when it comes to putting things like this together. I ran a theater company very early on in my life. I studied theater initially and learned how to produce theater, and that sort of transitioned into film eventually.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So how was that, running a theater?
I was young and dumb.
weren't we all?
But apparently not too dumb, because I managed to run a theater company in the black for 2 years.
Okay.
Which every accountant and lawyer at the time told me was impossible. They all said you were going to lose money. But we always kept our books
You're the king of impossible,
clean.
aren't you? There you go. You can overcome anything.
I came right out of high school and with this theater background, and decided I didn't want to work normal jobs. So I just went to what I knew, which was theater.
And let's see, in 2017, you also were in a short playing yourself, Actor's Life.
Oh, yeah, that was...
I'm taking you back. I did my research.
Yeah, that was I can't remember who put that together exactly here locally, but they were interviewing up-and-coming actors.
It was Scorsese or Spielberg.
Yeah,
somebody
one
like
of those
that,
people.
I think.
I wish. No, they were just interviewing local actors and just trying to see what the inspiration was and advice and whatnot. So I just had a little segment in that. So.
Cool. Let's see some of the things that you've won in the Knoxville Film Festival. Savior's Mule from 2017. You were the producer, and along with Aaron Paderewski, y'all shared the honor of winner of Best Genre Slapstick in the Knoxville Film Festival for Savior's Mule. I didn't say what the movie was. And you were nominated in 2017 for Best Use of Character in the 48-Hour Film Project.
Yeah.
So you had, let's see, for the Knoxville Film Festival in 2017, the 7-day shootout filmmaking competition. The Savior's Mule in 2017 was Best Genre Slapstick, and you shared that with David Harlan Russo and also with Aaron Paderewski there. On that, I got your rap sheet here. It's a long one, sir. And but you're so accomplished, so it's
kind of funny to actually hear somebody talk about it in this way. It's it's like, wow, I did that, really?
You did that, yeah. Well, we talked, David and I on the last episode, we talked about, we make films in this industry and we don't realize how many films we make, and then by the time they come out, you sometimes have almost forgotten that, and it's like reliving a moment in history, because it really is a moment in time that you just capture that story and that performance. And so coming back to revisit some of those things is really nice sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, between theater and film, wow, I forget a lot of things that I have done in the past.
I don't even know what today is, so if that helps. But let's see. Here's some winners that you had in 2018, you were nominated for Best Actor in Cello, which was awesome. I was talking with David on the last episode that what a fascinating film, and I was so glad that you were part of that group that I was privileged to work with on that film, and exceptional performance.
Oh, thank you.
I really, very powerful. I love how you have such a great range of how you play your characters, and you have such a wide body there. That's just an example of the wide body of work that you have. We'll go back to 2017, where for Indeed, you won in the 48-Hour Film Project. You were the winner of Best Actor. And you also won in 2015 for Behind Closed Doors, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And am I correct to say you were the only person to win twice from this area?
As far as I know, I am the only person to have won Best Actor twice. I think I looked back at that a while ago, and I think that is true. And I do believe I'm the only person that's been nominated 3 times for that same award. Yeah.
You were also a winner with Best Ensemble Cast for Back to One from 2014 in the 48-Hour, and that shared with a plethora of people there, the Ensemble Cast and all that. So, wow. Do you ever rest?
Yeah, I like work-life balance. I try to take my breaks, but you gotta, if you want to do this for a living in particular, you gotta hustle. So
Gotta stay alive and working. Yeah, you gotta just push for it. Okay, let's start with just some questions here. I'm going to fire off at you, and one of them is what I think our audience may want to know, and I want to know, is what motivated you to become an actor? Why not ditch digger? Why not a cashier at the local?
Well, ditch digger was tempting, actually. When my mother walked into the room when I was 5 and looked at me and said, "Son, what do you want to be?" I thought ditch digger originally, but
because who doesn't?
Yeah, I know. But actually, the way that I remember it is that my mother did, in fact, walk into the room when I was about 5, and I was probably watching, Sesame Street or The Electric Company or something
like that. Oh, yeah.
And on TV, and she asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I pointed at the TV screen, and I went, "I want to do that."
Wow.
I had a sense, I think, as a child, that the coolest job in the universe would be to be an adult and make money, making a world up and playing and dressing up. I thought that was cool.
Make believe for money.
Yeah, and as time went on, and my mother wasn't shocked by that. She's like, "Okay, that's cool." My parents were generally pretty supportive of all the things I ever wanted to do, which is awesome. Thanks, parents. Yes. But as time went on, and that question would come up again and again and again, I still had the same answer. It just evolved.
And at some point, she said, "You have to stop watching Sesame Street here."
Yeah. I mean,
you're 25 years old, and you haven't left that spot since you were 5.
I was almost 30 and still watching Sesame Street. And,
there's nothing wrong with that.
She's like, maybe you should study drama. But no.
And you're like, "Oh, Mom, I can't. I simply can't study drama."
But my parents were, I had some really cool advantages. One is that my parents were very supportive, and
Awesome.
I cannot stress enough how important it is as an actor or getting into any sort of, artistic pursuit, how important it is to have a support system, and particularly the support of your parents, your loved ones, your friends, your wife, your lovers, your whoever. You need support. So thankfully my parents didn't look at me like I had 7 heads when I told them I wanted to be an actor. And in fact, my mother was very kind of excited about that idea. So she grew up in Southern Oregon, and Southern Oregon just happens to be the home for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Awesome.
Down in Ashland, Oregon. And we spent our summers there visiting my grandparents. So I kind of grew up in a classical theater environment.
Right.
Anyway, and my parents, they watch a lot of PBS, so we always had access to British television and lots of classical programming and Masterpiece Theater and all that. So as a child, I was probably a kind of a weird kid in this, that I glommed on to very heady classical drama pretty early on. Mm-hmm. I was reading Shakespeare probably by the time I was 9 or 10. Not that I understood all of it. That takes time to sort out, but I could get the gist of plays at the time. So it just progressed over time. My hero growing up, I remember in school the teacher was going around the room at some point, and he asked, who do you want to meet the most? And of course most of the kids were talking about whatever pop star or whatever was famous at the time, and they got to me, and I said, yeah, I would like to sit down with Laurence Olivier.
Wow.
And her mind was blown. She was dumbfounded. And of course, all the kids in that room were going, "I have no idea who that is." But those were my heroes growing up. Were Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine and Peter O'Toole and Richard Harris and all these great British and Irish actors.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That leads me to another question that I'm going to get to about actors in just a second. But what is your method of acting? Is there a specific method of acting that you use?
Yeah, I studied classical theater primarily. A lot of my training is rooted very much in classical theater, and I actually probably use more classical training even on film than I probably do anything else. And classical training is usually very physical in a lot of ways. The approach is to go from the outside in, as opposed to a lot of American styles, like The Method and things like that, which are more internal and work their way out. I'm one of those actors that I'll read the script, I'll break down the script, I'll get an understanding of that. Generally, I was taught that, for the most part, anything you could possibly want to know about your character is in the script. Should be, ideally.
Right.
You shouldn't have to make up too much, hopefully. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to get somewhere specific that's not in that script, so you have to figure out what you're going to do. But hopefully, if it's a well-written piece, then every clue you need about that character is in that script. And, you put a costume on me, and I'm usually, a certain physicality comes about, and I'm just ready to roll. A voice comes out of me. I'll spend a little time looking in the mirror and just feeling it out, and it just evolves.
How long does it take you to prep, or does it depend upon the role?
It can depend on the role. Some characters I get a sense for really quickly, and certainly working in the 48-hour film projects and a lot of student films where oftentimes you don't have a lot of time to prep, you have to make conclusions pretty quick. So I've always had a pretty good idea of how to nail a character fast. In some cases, historical characters, or if you have a historic figure, like an actual person that you're portraying, or a person that has a particular job that you might not know about, then yeah, I'm going to do a lot of research. I happen to be a history geek, so
me too.
That
history,
that has played into a lot of my love of research for characters. So yeah, I try to research as much as I can.
What was your first role like? The first time you got, and I know you did theater, you said.
Yeah.
So what was like your first movie role?
First movie role.
What was it like, that first experience?
It felt awesome. It felt really natural. Again, I had come out of the theater, so I had experience.
Right.
It took a little bit of adjustment. Not much. I'm a little bit of an oddity, I think, because a lot of theater actors have a tendency through their training to be a little too big on film. And that's natural because you're usually playing to a massive house, so you have to project yourself out there. But because of the physical nature of the training that I received, I always interpreted it a little differently, which was to act to the size of the screen, or, the size of the stage you have.
Okay.
And in the case of a screen, it's right there in your face.
Right.
So you don't have to be big. So I just figured out really quick, okay, you don't have to be big, you just have to be natural.
Okay.
My general approach always is, how would I, if this were me, if this character were me in an alternate universe, I had a different background. I grew up differently. I had different experiences, and sometimes, obviously in preparation you'll think, was this person abused? Was this person, treated nicely by their family? Whatever the circumstances you've created for that character, I just interpret that through my own filter. If this were me, how would I project that into the universe? So I don't overthink it. I think a lot of actors will tend to overthink that stuff. I find it just easier to process it through myself.
Okay. Your own experience, too?
My own experience. Sometimes my own experience, or sometimes if I've done enough research or I've talked to people who have had these types of experiences, I will use their experiences. I'll try to... I've always been very good in terms of empathy for people. I've just always felt connections when I listen to people talk and their stories, and so I've always been pretty good at projecting that through myself when I've had to.
So we kind of talked about how you get started in the business there. Let's talk about people that are established. What actor inspires you the most, and why?
Oy.
That's a big question.
That's a big one because there are so many.
It's like, which of the kids do I like the best?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned Laurence Olivier right off the bat. So, I mean, that was like my childhood hero. So one of his fundamental principles, he said it in an interview, and I'm going to probably paraphrase this very badly, but he described himself as a workman, consummate workman. He said, I believe a carpenter is a workman. I believe, God is a workman. And he felt that he was a workman. He was just a craftsman, effectively. And I've always been attracted to interpreting what I do as an actor in that same idea. And one of my other heroes, a little bit more contemporary, that I really read a lot about when I was a kid, was Harrison Ford.
Oh, definitely.
Who also describes himself in the same way. I mean, he was a carpenter for years, a consummate craftsman, consummate professional. I read a lot of interviews with him talking about how he,
I think, if I remember correctly, and I'm going to mess this story up, but how he got into Star Wars was he was working on a door, and I think George Lucas or somebody said, come on in here, and he read for the part of Han Solo and got it.
Effectively, him and George Lucas, my understanding is they knew each other because they had done American Graffiti together.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford had gone through the tail end of the studio system in the 60s and 70s. That system was dying out by then, and thankfully so, because effectively actors were sort of slaves to a studio for long periods of time.
To the studios, yes.
Their contracts were pretty vicious.
Cary Grant's going to work with a certain studio,
they could dictate who you went out with. They could dictate, your entire image.
There's still some of that going on.
There's still some of that goes on. It's been reinterpreted differently these days, but back then it was pretty heavy duty. And he didn't like that system very much. I mean, he worked on lots of those cheesy shows, Love American Style and FBI and those types of shows for years, and Westerns and, things that are totally forgettable at this stage. And he'd become a carpenter at that point because he had to make ends meet.
Right.
And he had a family, and he was making more money as a carpenter. I mean, he literally, when he walked into the Star Wars audition and they said, we'll have you read for some actors, and they were saying, well, maybe we should consider you for this part. And he was like going, I'm making more money as a carpenter. I don't need you.
I think he carried that with him to this present day. He just has that almost like I don't care. I know he does, but it's like, I don't care. I don't really need this. I'm good, and that's an interesting take to have on things because some people are so hungry for it. Not that he wasn't hungry for it back then, but
he had learned kind of the consummate rule, which is to calm down and stop overthinking it. Stop. You have to care, but at some point,
he's very matter of fact.
It'll take over. You've got to stop the brain candy going on in your head about doing this kind of work, because if you don't, it'll just drive you nuts. Mm-hmm. I watch actors constantly driving themselves insane to get parts, and what I've generally found is, yes, you have to care, but the less you internalize it, you have to walk into auditions, do the audition best you can on that day, walk out, forget about it. It's just, if you sit there and focus on it for the next week, you're going to drive yourself nuts. Did I get it? Did I not get it? It's too much. And every actor does that, I think, in the beginning.
Right.
But the more you audition, I think the number you get to it, eventually you start going, okay, I'm not going to get this one either, so whatever.
I'm a big Star Wars fan, so we could talk all day about Star Wars, but that's not why we're here. I'm going to give us, all good movies have a good cliffhanger, right? Or so we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what movie was the most influential to your acting career. So I'll give you a second to think about that while we go ahead to this quick break.
The Savannah graduate chapter of Phi Beta Sigma will present their annual Blue Skies Summer Soiree, a formal dinner and dance, this year featuring the Deep End Band, to benefit Phi Beta Sigma scholarships, the March for Babies, and the Sigma Beta Club. The event will take place on Saturday, August 25th at the Stage on Bay in Savannah. For more information, visit savannahsigmas.com. WRUU 107.5 FM is community radio with global soul. Tune in this evening. From 7 to 8, John Bennett presents Here It Is Tomorrow. Almost popular, no longer popular, and never was popular music. From 8 to 9, Pat Shaw presents Crucial Rhythms, Dance Hall and Reggae. From 9 to 10, Big Tex and Ham Sud present Rigor Mortis, Rockabilly, Psychobilly, Surf, and Swing. Find our full schedule at wruu.org.
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, wruu.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
And we're back with Patrick Roper, All Around Jedi Knight. And we're talking about what movie most influenced you the most in your acting career.
Yeah, that's another big epic one. I think I can pinpoint this. I touched on this the other day on Facebook, actually, because I've been doing this little exercise of kind of identifying films and actors that have inspired and influenced me recently, which has been really interesting and cathartic. But the first actor I actually picked in that was John Malkovich in Dangerous Liaisons. That film, that came out when I was kind of at the height of studying theater and acting, and that film spoke to me. That role spoke to me. I I thought it was such a rich and interesting, diabolical character who had such an interesting arc through the film. So I probably, in the theater, watched that movie maybe 10 or 12 times, I think, when it was out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what role did you find most challenging in your acting career, and why?
Oy. One big challenge I had, and this was a theater role, was I did a lot of a fair amount of Shakespeare and Restoration theater in my classical career. But I did a production in I must have been early to mid-20s, of King Lear, and I was playing the Earl of Kent. And the Earl of Kent is written as an old man, and he kind of goes in disguise to help monitor King Lear as King Lear is off wandering in the wilderness and being crazy. And because I was a young guy, they decided not to make me up as an old man. They decided to remove all the dialogue in the show that were some of the funnest jokes and bits of dialogue that I had that revolved around me being an old guy. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of left with this. When I initially looked at it, I'm like, wow, it just seems like a shell. I don't know what to do with this. And I struggled with that for a while. And then I asked a friend of mine who was a good director, what he thought about that. And he said, well, have you ever seen Akira Kurosawa's Ran? I said, yeah, it's a great movie. It's the Japanese version of King Lear, for those that haven't seen it. And he said, well, your character in that film, how old is he? I'm like, well, he's, I don't know, probably in his early 30s. He's like, well, he's not an old man. So what is his chief characteristic in that film? And I thought about it, and I said, well, he's loyal. That's the baseline definition of that character, is that he's loyal to King Lear. And, the light bulb went on. It's like, oh, yeah, that's what I was missing. That's why I was too focused on the minutia of that character, that it didn't dawn on me that the primary characteristic of that character was that he was unquestionably loyal to this crazy king.
Wow. I love some Shakespeare. My favorite is Macbeth.
Yeah, I did a production of that. I played Macduff in Macbeth.
Wow.
That was a fun production. It was also, that one was a little odd because I am 6'4", and I think the guy who played Macbeth was probably 5'8" in heels. So it was hard to be intimidated by him in any way, shape, or form. And I did take a lot of pleasure cutting his head off every night.
Wow. Get rid of that ego. Let me cut your head off.
Yeah. I have to admit, the actor who played that had a bit of an ego. So, that was a joy. That was a joy cutting his head off every night. But I took pleasure in that.
Yeah. Another literary person that I really enjoy, and I'm actually rocking that shirt right now, is Edgar Allan Poe. I was in a store not too long ago, and someone said, "Why do you have a shirt with John Wilkes Booth on it?" And I was like, "What? No, I don't. It's Edgar Allan Poe." But have you ever got to do anything Poe when you were in theater or film?
I'm trying to remember if I did any Poe.
Because Poe is so dark and beautiful in its own way.
I've done excerpts. I've done readings of Poe. When I think back on it, yeah, I've done some readings.
I can see you doing some Poe though. I mean, you definitely. There's not much you can't do.
Yeah, I did there was a period of time where I would, Halloween or things like that, where I would end up in coffee shops and we'd do stage readings of pieces, and I do seem to recall Poe coming up a time or two in some of those readings.
Well, in talking about different roles, what do you think one of your dream roles would be?
Oh, probably Bond villain.
You could be a great Bond villain.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and it always keeps rotating back to Bond villain.
Can you do me a Bond villain accent? Maybe Cello as a Bond villain. Maybe he was a Bond villain.
Oh, Mr. Bond. I always picture this sort of comical image of a freaky Bond villain, who sits around in a chair and pets a Boston Terrier, and then his method of torturing Bond is to tie a bunch of tennis balls to Bond, and then release 100 Boston Terriers into the room.
Are we talking Dr. Evil here? But
I tend to gravitate towards villains. I like playing not so nice people, so I would just relish in a good Bond villain.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Daniel Craig's coming up on his last turn as Bond. And I think this next Bond film is his last time he's going to do it.
Yeah. I actually, I submitted for the role that Dave Bautista played, actually, in the last one.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I knew I didn't have a shot at it, but they were asking, they had open submissions for that at the time.
You got to try. You got to try.
I just threw myself out there. They were looking for a big guy, so I went, okay, I'll send it.
I like it. I love you as a Bond villain, man. I would go see that. I would definitely get myself go see that.
I had not long ago. I was in an acting class situation, and somebody had mentioned to me, is like, you remind me a lot of Mads Mikkelsen, particularly in Casino Royale.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the way I sit. It's just the way I carry myself is Bond villainish, I guess.
Oh, I don't have the rights for that. I can't do the Bond theme there.
That's actually my cell phone ring.
Oh, is it? Yeah. See, that's awesome. You were meant to be a Bond villain. Let's see. What have you found most rewarding so far about working in film?
The relationships, I think. Probably. I love the people that you meet. The vast majority of people that I've met have been awesome, fantastic. Not generally speaking, I've been, fingers crossed, not a lot of egos I've dealt with, which has been great. And particularly at this level where everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing.
Right.
Most people are they're pretty open, they're pretty willing, they're pretty generous with their time. And a lot of the people that are sort of above, me in my career, a couple levels above, have always been very generous, mentors and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say definitely the people.
Yeah, the relationships that I've made. I mean, it's a great support system. My film friends, as I sometimes call them, they're my friends, and there's so many, and it's hard to keep track because I've worked on a lot of films. I know you've worked on tons of films, and probably if you don't see a lot of them, it's kind of, you're like, yeah. How are you doing? And then it clicks.
My wife and I, we moved here. We're not from Savannah originally, as most people can probably tell from my accent. We're from Seattle.
You don't say.
I know. Although my father was from South Texas, so when I spend enough time around people here, I start slipping into that sort of mode of speech. But we moved here 5 years ago, and we didn't know anybody. We moved here on a whim. Mm-hmm. And I had taken a break from acting for a number of years, and when we were moving here, the thought had crossed my mind again. It was like, it's happening in Georgia, so I might as well get back into it. That's what I loved to do when I started, so I might as well do it again. And obviously, we didn't know anybody here, so it took some time to get to know people, and we had friends through her work at the time. I didn't really meet a lot of people, but the second I got involved in acting again, suddenly the world opened up. Like,
wow.
We got to meet everybody in town, because it's a huge world, but being Savannah, it's a very small world. Everybody knows everybody here.
Yeah, this is the big little city, as I call it.
Yeah.
And, it's growing leaps and bounds. The film community is just exploding in a great way. And people worldwide are taking notice of Savannah.
Oh, yeah.
And with this program, I hope that we further that and give voices to the Savannah film community so that more actors, producers, directors, whatever, can get the word out. And people know when they listen worldwide and they find out that, yeah, Savannah is really a great place. And with the tax incentives, of course, they're going to come here. They're going to save money by coming here, and setting up shop here in good old Savannah, Georgia. So another question I got for you. You've been involved in several film projects, several of them. What have you learned from each film that you've made? I know it's kind of hard to break it down, but maybe generally, let's say. What have you learned overall from your body of work in film?
I've definitely learned patience. That's been a big thing. I think when I was younger, I was probably not always the most patient person on the planet, but every film you make, has different challenges, which is hugely rewarding. But you need to have a lot of patience when you're doing it. There's, things go wrong. You gotta work things through on the fly, and you gotta make it happen. And particularly,
right.
you get things like timed festivals, like you and I have done several together
yes.
now, and stuff goes wrong. You got to figure out figure out what to do, and you don't have time for it's hot, it's sweaty, it's buggy here. You don't have time for people's spats and irritation and frustration. You just got to get the job done. You got to learn how to prioritize and be patient, be calm, and just figure it out.
Yeah, in the end, it's about the job. It's about capturing that perfect performance, and that'll live on forever.
Hopefully.
And hopefully. So what do you think makes Savannah such a wonderfully attractive place to make films?
Well, certainly, as you mentioned, the tax incentives, of course, in Georgia in general has just
Cha-ching.
boomed this place.
Yes.
Savannah in particular, for starters, Movie Maker magazine, which is one of the largest publications of independent filmmaking in the country, and very actually proud to say that magazine started in Seattle. It's
awesome.
now, I think, in Burbank. But they have, since 2014, Savannah has been on the list of best places, best small cities to be an independent producer, filmmaker. In, I think, 2014, 15, we were kind of lower on that list, like 4 or 5. In 2016 and 2017, we actually bumped up to number 1. And this year, 2018, we were sort of bumped out a little bit by New Orleans, but we're still number 2 on that list.
Right.
And part of that, obviously, Savannah is like one big museum. It's one big movie set.
It is. There's a great mix of the old and the new.
Yeah.
And with emphasis on the old, the historic, which is such great. And we have such wonderful surroundings. I mean, the beach, we've talked about this before, the beach, the downtown, everywhere, Yeah,
the only thing we don't have here is mountains in a quick reachable way. You have to go 4 hours up state to find anything resembling a hill. But but there's a lot of really good locations here. The weather, of course, for the most part cooperates, although it was a bit rainy today.
Yeah, and then it'll be sticky later.
I mean, this time of year is certainly a little challenging for the productions that come into town because we're guaranteed to get at least one good squall a day. So you never know when that's going to hit.
And then you get a steam bath.
Yep.
So
and that can be pretty miserable. But
it all comes down and then it goes right back up.
So the environment, the people we have, particularly in the last several years. People have been both on the acting side and on the production side have been training. Obviously, we've got lots of production programs that are starting, like at Savannah Tech and of course SCAD. I mean, almost every school here has got some sort of program now that is training people on the production end, which definitely we need more of. And then on the acting side of things, we have access to a lot of very good teachers locally who, and more have come in the last couple of years, who are training actors and training them, not only in technique, but also in the business side and professionalism. So the pool is growing exponentially. So we're definitely getting more local actors getting roles, like decent roles, in bigger films that are coming into town, which is cool.
Well, as we're wrapping up here with our last question, that leads us right into what I was going to ask you. What advice can you give to actors, writers, performers, up and coming in the industry that are making their mark?
For for anybody really, definitely learn your craft. There are many avenues of doing that. You can find teachers, you can read books, you can, there's methods of practicing things at home. There's a lot of info out there in the universe online that you can study and learn from. So on the practical side, learn your craft, learn the business. Very important, particularly for actors. Learn the business. The business is as important as the actual craft of acting. And then on the other side of that, the sort of self-care side, I would tell any actor in particular, be an interesting person, have a life outside of this, learn interesting skills. And, this is, I'd give this advice to almost anybody, actor or not, is just be an interesting person, have a life, do exciting things, be the kind of person that you would want to watch. Become a character, effectively become the character you would want to see.
Very good, because it'll make you a more well-rounded person. It'll help in your performance, no matter what your craft is within the film industry. So,
and I guarantee you, casting directors will look at you after they see that kind of depth, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, that one.
That one. There's something special about that one." And well, Patrick, I want to thank you for joining me today on Savannah on Film. Savannah on Film wants to feature professionals at different levels. So if you're wondering, if you're listening online, if you're listening, watching us on YouTube, and you're in the industry, I'd love to talk to you. Savannah on Film is a voice for the Savannah film community. You can email us at savannahonfilm@gmail.com. Please check out our Facebook page. You can like and follow us there to see new episodes and updates there on Facebook, Savannah on Film. And on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And you have been listening to Savannah on Film with our guest, Patrick Roper. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You have been listening to Savannah on Film, and I'm your host, Ed Susevich, on WRUU 107.5 FM LP, Savannah Soundings. We are community radio with global soul. You have been listening to another episode of Savannah on Film, where we give a voice to the Savannah film community. Please like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. This program was originally broadcast on 107.5 FM in Savannah, Georgia, and worldwide on www.wruu.org. Join us next time for more intriguing insights into the vibrant Savannah film community here at Savannah on Film.